Today I bring you a friend of mine, Tom Murphy. I had known Tom for about 2 years when we were in a pub in the same company one day when the subject of the Berlin Wall came up. I was waxing lyrical about the causes of it and what was known and certain elements of it, and Tom piped in and said, "Dahi, that's not how it happened." I continued my ranting and opinionated views, and Tom again piped in a few minutes later and said, "Dahi, that's not how it happened." I argued back against Tom and told him my views and philosophical reasoning for why I thought this is why it happened, and Tom said, "Dahi, that's not how it happened. I know because I was there." I was somewhat taken aback by this, and it began a long conversation between me and Tom that has lasted now a couple of years. Tom is reluctant to talk about his experiences because Tom saw a lot of suffering. Tom saw a lot of dignified people put through indignity, and it's not something Tom wants to use for entertainment purposes or to win arguments, but through my conversations with Tom, he has caused a lot of reflection in me, caused me to rethink how I see things, how I see war-torn areas, how I see the people that come from these war-torn areas. And being that this podcast is about causing reflection, I do hope Tom causes reflection in you listeners. Me and Tom talked about some of the places he's been, places like Somalia, Uganda, Rwanda, Northern Ireland, Moscow, Iraq, even Connemara in his childhood. Well, Tom has been in interesting places at interesting times, and I think has some interesting insights. We discussed the importance of community, we discussed life and death, we discussed the visible benefits and the hidden costs of our modern lifestyle. So without further delay, I bring you my dear friend, Tom Murphy. Hello, Tom, and welcome to Philosophekery.
Philosophekery, I love it. I love the sort of the bare-assed voyager on the Sea of Fog or whatever you see from the David Frye picture.
The wanderer above the fog.
The wanderer above the frog, very cold ass.
I somehow think Nietzsche would like it with his ass out, but I don't know. I'll have to ask Serena or somebody about that one.
You have to check the cover of the picture for the podcast. It amused me. It doesn't mean problem, but that's me.
But, well, it's good to have you here, Tom. Mm-hmm. And there's reasons you're here. I will have done an introduction there. But loosely, what was it you did for a living? Loosely, for about 28 years, I was a cameraman or camera person, because there's plenty of camera women, doing the job as well at the time. But I basically travelled the world through Africa and the Middle East a lot, and the subcontinent, and latterly the Far East, travelling, just covering stories for mostly American companies, broadcasters. And it was a very unique experience. I don't think the opportunity really exists now to do something like that for so long, so consistently for so long. I think that we lived in a world of, in the 80s and 90s when I was doing most of my work, we lived in a world where the mainstream media was the predominant arbiter of information to the public, and we there weren't very many of us. I would say. Name a few places in the world. I'm sure people will recognise the names of these places that have had conflict.
Oh yeah.
And was it the conflict that drew you to these places?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the people that cover these what they call hostile environments, or what used to be called war zones, but I prefer hostile environments. Was the urge for adventure, the urge to see what really went on, which wasn't what we think it is a lot of the time, And we see also to see what humanity is like in extremis, sort of like how bad people can be and how saintly and how wonderful people can be too. I just couldn't go and work in nothing wrong with factory work, but I couldn't go and do a 9-to-5 job. It wasn't for me, and I had this wonderful opportunity in a pub in West London. Sort of said, I applied for a job, and they said, there was a company called TNT at the time, and they sort of kind of interviewed me, but they really wanted to go to the pub at lunchtime, and they took me to the pub at lunchtime because I just turned up at the right time. I think if I turned up at 9:30 or 3:00, I wouldn't have got the job.
Okay.
I just happened to be I just turned up at opening time, so let's go to the pub. We can talk there.
And then down in the pub was where you got the job.
And basically, no. But what happened in the pub was very strange. Was that how it was the guy who introduced me sort of went to order a couple of drinks, and as you're standing waiting, you look around the pub to see who else is there. It's a normal sort of thing. And there's one guy standing in the corner who's laughing to himself, smoking a cigarette. I'm like really laughing to himself.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, thank goodness I don't have to deal with that kind of guy today. And the guy who's buying me a drink turns around and looks over and goes, "Steve, there you are. Here's Tom."
So you were to be his cameraman, is that?
I was going to be his sound recordist.
Okay,
general assistant, and he's he was just one of the most wonderful people I've ever met. His name's Steve O'Neill, and and we just went on a bender. We just clicked right away, and sometime late into the evening, he says, "Listen, Bruce," he calls everybody Bruce at the time.
All right.
He says, "Do you want to come with me to Beirut?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. Where's Beirut?"
Okay, that was it. Your first stop, Beirut.
Yeah.
And how? Name some of the other places that you've been.
Oh yeah, that's your question. Yeah, basically, if you go through the 80s and 90s, I've probably been to most of the trouble spots, and you've probably seen some of my pictures one way or the other, or the pictures of people I know, more likely. So I started off going to Beirut, and I saw from the there was Palestinians in the south of Beirut city. There's a Palestinian camp called Sabra and Chinchilla, and I arrived just after that massacre that took place there.
Okay.
And so I saw what at that time what the Israelis were capable of, and sort of scared me a lot. And there was a war going on between the Phalangists and the Christian Phalangists and the Muslims in the south. That's the Palestinians. Let's call them Palestinians. And that was, and we had to cross the green line, and basically it's so risky. Once you cross the green line, you're kind of stuck on the other side until you're brave enough to go back over the green line again.
Okay.
And and the place that marked the boundary was the Holiday Inn. And what they used to do was they had the little carts, and you used to lie on the cart and sort of pull you across.
Really?
Yeah, so it was mad. It was completely
pull
mad.
You across.
Yeah, I was 22, so I was really stupid and thought it was great.
Yeah. Of course, who doesn't want to get pulled across a car through a war zone
at
22? Sounds like fun.
Yeah, then there was the Afghanistan. I was there for 3 months, and so I lived with the Mujahideen at the time, living in the mountains, and that was...
So this would have been
that was August 22, after the Israeli...
So this would the war that was going on in Afghanistan wasn't America versus Afghanistan. It was America helping Afghanistan versus Russia.
Yeah, well, we found out years later that Bin Laden was supplied by either Saudi, who went there and he managed to get money in for those guys, to fight against the Russians.
Yeah.
But from what I could see, most of the time the Afghans were fighting against each other.
Really?
You had more trouble with because they had to cross sort of tribal. I'll come back to it later in the conversation. But the whole tribal thing is very, very important. Who you're allied with and who your alliances are. And so, getting a train of ammunition plus our equipment into Afghanistan, you had to cross tribal areas, and sometimes it went well. Sometimes it didn't go so well, until you got to your place with up in the Hindu Kush.
So you needed permission from these different tribal groups to.
Oh, it took 3 weeks to get in, and it took nearly a month to get out.
Is it
a lot of walking?
Isn't that a common trope with Afghanistan, where they say to conquerors it's easy to enter but very hard to get out?
Well, it was very interesting because I read up on it before, and so I went to the place where the British were massacred.
The valley. It's
also called Pantry Valley.
Pantry Valley.
About the Pantry Valley, and we also had a book by Norman Lewis. Because we had very little to guide us. There isn't that much known about the area. And he described in the 50s when he walked through the Hindu Kush, and there was a robbery that took place, and they killed somebody, banged them on the head. And one of the thrills of that expedition was actually finding the spot that Norman Lewis described in his book. So this is what happened. So you got connected. And then sort of like further down the valley, we were at a place that I'd read about beforehand, where Alexander the Great had been.
Wow.
I can't remember the name right off the top. That's 40 years ago. I can't remember the names of the places. And that was a massive thrill. I felt a massive connection at that time, because
that would have been.
All there was a store with meat hanging on it.
Wow.
And it was like flies on the meat. And still hair bits.
That would have been the outer reaches of Alexander's empire at the time, wouldn't it?
Well, he got all the way to the Indus.
Okay.
And so, which was just beyond where we were.
Okay.
So that felt really like a part of history, because the conditions I was living in at that time were not very different from what Alexander the Great would have been. We carried all our own food, we had our own water, we totally reliant on the land, which was a problem later on, because when we came out there was literally no food. We used up all our food supplies, and so I lost a lot of weight. I came out I went in weighing. I weighed 140 pounds when I came out, 10 stone, which was very, very little.
And for those who can't see Tom, he does not look like a 10-stone man.
No, not anymore.
Rather broad shoulders.
Yeah, no, but I was very skinny at the end, and we had sort of like, I know it doesn't sound much, but I was crossing a river, and my foot slipped on a rock, and I hit my head. Not seriously, but I was really concerned because there was no doctors, no nothing, and I thought, I was really, really aware that, for most of our history, if you broke a leg, you were dead.
Yeah.
And sort of like, and so I've always had a great value put on science and medicines and stuff like this, because we know that they've really, really helped us. But we'll come to that later about why it can also be a bad thing, but it's not. It's not a bad thing in itself.
How did you find Afghani people at that time?
Right. Well, I was with the northern tribes, and I had a great admiration for them. Mountain people live in apart from desert people, which I'm not so interested in, but mountain people live in very harsh conditions, and it makes you very aware of your own how tough it is to survive. We I grew up in Hackney, and it was very tough, but this is survival level toughness, not just sort of
status level toughness.
It wasn't like sort of watching out for rough skinheads on the street or anything like that. Or this was like you either sorted yourself out or you died.
Okay.
And I'm going to just digress slightly here, and I'm going to come back to this again. It's about Robert Fisk. Robert Fisk wrote a great book. I can't remember the title, but any of Robert Fisk's book are worth reading. He died a few years ago. And he had a great theory about why the Taliban came to be, and that was because they wasn't in the Kush. They were in the east in a place called Waziristan, which I went to many years later, and it's one of the harshest environments I've ever seen. It's just so tough. There's no shred of greenery, and it's just nothing. And he said that because it was so tough for those Afghanis to live in that environment, they needed a cohesive set of rules to live by, and the most handiest ones they had to hand was the Quran. They were Islamic anyway, but they actually sort of became very fundamentalist, because when you're in those sort of survival conditions, you become very fundamental yourself. You're not thinking great thoughts. You're just thinking about how to get through the day.
Yeah.
And then you have this sort of structure, a societal structure that says this is how society is organised. And that just relieves a lot of pressure because A, you're part of that society, and B, you know what your function is in that society.
Yeah.
And so, like, surviving becomes that much easier. It's not like, me and a Parker and the Brecon Beacons. I'm with other people, and they believe the same thing, and we want the same thing. And
same values.
Yes, the exact same values. And those values, because of the harshness of the environment, became very fundamental.
Yeah.
Taliban means student
the word Taliban means student, student of Islam, I think.
Yeah. So they become absolute adherents to the word of the Quran.
And I guess they don't have like the technological infrastructure to enable a more complex account and a more complex system of ideas to take place. So I guess the simplification of it, be it the Bible or the Quran or whatever, it all comes in one book, and you can get many different ideas from the same text, and many rules of how to live and how to be, but the lack of complexity, the simplicity of it, makes it appropriate for mountain regions and living in harsh environments.
Right, yeah. It gives you an intellectual, that's going to be condescending, but it gives you an intellectual framework, a way of thinking about your things, because you're not only by yourself, but with other people.
Yeah.
And so it's all in it together. You all believe the same things. So you have a unified social structure, and sort of variance from that is punished quite severely. Yeah. So you have sort of an intrinsic incentive and an extrinsic incentive to behave in a certain way. It's
funny that the Islamic tradition, when it started around 700 AD, and it spread quite rapidly under the Abbasids, after the Umayyad went down, and under the Abbasids, but apparently there's very little archaeological evidence, because apparently, no, not entirely, but most of it spread peacefully, and being that the word Islam means peace, and so people took on these ideas, and not only did it spread peacefully, but it didn't cause immediate change. So the archaeologists show that it wasn't a village burned down, a new one built on top, that it shows that the changes that took place over time.
Right, yes.
And that shows respect for the cultures that were there, for the tribal beliefs that were there, that it wasn't enforced that everybody has to change immediately. So it was, like you say, it was a system of ideas that made a cohesive way of living amongst a broader population.
In difficult environments.
Yes,
they were basically very hard, which created a lot of hardship. And the people I was with weren't Taliban. They actually fought them later on. After, and
the Mujahideen.
Yeah, and they had a different take on it.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was a, and of course when you have two tribes or different philosophical ideas, they clash because well, not inevitably, but the academic sense they clash makes it very interesting in real life when you have philosophical or tribal ideas or these sort of ideas come together. They don't necessarily automatically mingle and mix. In fairness, it worked.
Yeah.
They survived. And it's like, maybe they would have survived without Islamic. If it wasn't Islam, or it'd be fundamental Christian, or it'd be some other idea that sort of nurtured and kept them going when times were tough. So
and made them become a collective.
And they felt part of something. And that feeling part of something is very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in fact, we can't actually ever get away from it. And one of the problems is that, certainly in we'll come on to it later, but my deep concerns is that, we've become so individualistic and atomized in Western culture, especially with social media.
Yeah.
It's just terrible that people can't socialise with each other properly.
I share those concerns, Tom, but again, we'll come back to that.
Yeah, but I mean, but that's the opposite of what happened there. And I can see why there would be comfort in having those ideas, even because the ideas were no more brutal than the environment that you were living in.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you know, so
they matched it somewhat.
Yeah,
they matched the reality somewhat.
Yeah, reality matched thought.
Yeah.
You know, and so like, you know, so we have to be careful when we sort of say, you know, of course we can't. We have to sort of say the time has passed and that's the way of thinking, but it's going to take time. You can't just sort of say, turn a switch, say, oh no, you don't have to worry about living in a cave and we're serious time anymore.
Yeah, I get you. Here's a kettle.
You know, it's too built into the system, you know? And why would they change it? It worked.
Yeah. Where did you go after that, Tim?
Well, then after that, I went all over the place after that during the late 80s. And it was sort of troubles. Well, I went to a lot to Northern Ireland, and I was at Milltown Cemetery when Michael Stone threw those hand grenades, and
that was at a funeral.
I was at a funeral,
a loyalist funeral,
at an IRA funeral for 3 people who had been killed by the SAS in Gibraltar.
Okay.
And so it wasn't a loyalist one; it was the Milltown Cemetery, which is a Catholic cemetery, and it was rather peculiar because I was at the back. And I was at the back of the crowd, which is not normally where I'd be.
Yeah.
But we had another crew there, and they were at the front. So what happens then is like you divide the labour. So you just concentrate on what was going on in front, and I just got all the extra shots.
Okay.
So it was like a day, you know, it's a day at the office kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you know, then the hand grenades went off, and the sound recordist, his name's Andy Lawrence, so it's basically sort of saved us. You know, because I was just transfixed by what was going on, and he just sort of pulled me out of the way and said, you know, get behind here.
A quick question now. You said the word transfixed there, and it's something that I've wondered in conversations with you. When you're behind the camera,
oh yeah,
and there's something going on like the hand grenades.
Yeah. Not
that you feel invulnerable, but do you feel somewhat detached? Like you have to keep the camera on it. Do you feel somewhat? I can't run. I can't move. I have to keep watching.
What's the only reason I'm there?
Yeah.
I'm saying that's why I'm there.
Yeah. So you have to literally be pulled away from that most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to, and also, you know, you have to have a bit of ambition and stuff. You have to sort of like want to do something. You want to be there. I'm like, you know, I wasn't going to go all the way there and. I mean, I've done this before in other places. I have gone all the way there and hidden behind a wall, but you know, but I'm like, you know. But mostly, you know, you just really wanted to get what was going on. And also, it's very confusing because all I heard was a lot of bangs and a lot of people running.
Yeah. And
I was trying to figure out, I just had a wide shot on the lens, I was trying to figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
And I was looking for some kind of clue as to what I was going to do next. I just held a wide shot. And that's when I was pulled out of the way because Andy had seen what the trouble was and it was coming our way. And he actually apparently took a shot at us. I mean, that's what I was told afterwards, I don't know. But our van became like an ambulance, and they put one of the bodies in the van. And I remember it's clear, sort of, everybody's in a panic, and they kind of kept shutting the door on this guy's head.
Oh, Jesus.
But what's even worse than that was like my sandwiches were on the back seat. And I knew that if I didn't get those sandwiches, I wasn't going to eat for the rest of the day.
Well, we all have priorities in these moments, don't we? I guess.
So like, you know, it's sort of tragic comic, really. So like, you know, so like, you know, so these things happen, you know. So like, and John Jordan was our driver, and he did a fantastic job, and you know, and Andy did. You know, these people were wonderful. Yeah.
It is amazing, though, isn't it? How like the reality of our own survival comes down to in moments like this, and tragedy and
comedy, and sort of like, you know, what you remember.
But you need the sandwiches. You know, you've a job to do. You're going to need sustenance. You need the sandwiches.
Because I've been doing that job for 6 years by then, and I knew that what was going to happen next was going to be a long night ahead of us.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so it was kind of like experience kicking in. It wasn't sort of like, you know, me being sort of a princess about it. Well, you know, it wasn't me being a sort of, you know,
a diva
about it. You know,
I get you.
You know, it's a practical thing.
You knew what was important for the job. Just while we're in Northern Ireland, I've heard you speak like this before, so I'm asking you questions I already know the answers to. But what do you think had a big impact on peace coming to the north, particularly around the Falls Road area?
Well, you have to sort of treat the the Falls Road and Shankill Road are sort of like, I don't know if any people know the geography of Belfast, but the Falls Road kind of goes directly west side of the centre of Belfast, and the Shank Road kind of parallels it slightly to the north, and it goes on for like a mile and a half, well, more than that, yeah. And the people had nothing. The people were really, they really had, certainly the Catholic uprising, the civil rights things in 67, 68, for 68, 69, sorry, were absolutely justified. Because they had a really bad job. But what made it worse was that over on the Shankill Road, in the housing they had, was just the same.
It was as bad.
It was as bad. And I remember very clearly one day I was in somebody's house, and on the cameras on a tripod, and there's a tripod arm, and I moved the tripod arm, and the tripod arm sank into the wall because it was so damp.
Oh wow!
And later on the day, I think it was the same day, we were over on the other side with the Protestants, and they were saying the same things they always say. But I was looking at the wall, and I thought, it's the same thing.
The same dampness, same.
Yeah, you guys are just the same.
Living in the same squalor.
Yeah, you've been conned. I'm going to get from my legs broken for that, but
Yeah.
And you've been treated badly, both of you.
Yeah. So there really wasn't that much difference between the sides, other than the stories they were believing and about each other and about themselves.
And what really changed it all was that the British government, after trying so many stupid things, finally came to the senses and said, we just need to give these people, put some cash in these people's pocket. So they created sort of the big shopping centre, and made the Seagate factory came there, and so like suddenly all these young lads and young women had jobs and a bit of money in their pocket, and do you want to earn some money, or do you want to throw a brick at a soldier? It's like, no, I've got money to take my girlfriend out. I'm going to go out with my girlfriend.
Yeah, so
and it's a simple social level like that, and people dress up in politics and stuff. But I was watching it all, and that's what I saw.
And for you, it was just giving people a sense of purpose, a sense of self-worth. There's something to do during the day.
Yeah, because both, up until that point, both sides had nothing.
Yeah,
and it was a real working class war as well.
Yeah,
and people got their degrees in Longkesh and the prisons and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's very important to remember as well. These were, in the car over here, we were talking about people being educated and stuff like that. And it's incredibly vitally important that people do have the opportunity of education, because it gives them a more sophisticated way of talking about what the problem is, and therefore there's a chance of having a more sophisticated solution.
Yeah. Did you ever get hurt in the north?
Sort of.
How so?
Oh, sort of. Somebody just hit me in the face. That was all.
Do tell the story, Tom.
No, I was just down at it was like 83 or something, and so there's a car on fire, and this kid, it couldn't have been more than 5, 6, 7, said, get out of here, Mr.
So you were standing at the car on fire?
I was filming the car on fire, and there was, and he said, you're going to get out of here. I'm going to take advice from a 5-year-old kid or 7-year-old kid, and it's like, I'll take advice from you. I'm going to leave. Yeah. So I just wandered behind this army truck for shelter, and this guy just hit me in the face with his rifle.
One of the army guys
hit me on the lip, and it really, really hurt. It didn't hit me that hard, but it really hurt.
Did he know who you were?
He's being a dick.
Yeah, okay.
You have the adrenaline up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've got no problems with him.
He was hitting whatever came close. I suppose he was doing his job.
He was having a bad day, and I was the first thing he saw. So I was like, I didn't take it personally, but I did hurt a lot.
So over to maybe another part of the world. You spend a lot of time in Africa, in different places in Africa.
Oh yeah. I'm not really a major African hand. Like some people sort of spend their whole lives and careers doing that, but I went there quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. What parts of Africa did you see?
Most of the east side, Kenya, Somalia, which is probably one of the worst places I've ever been to. But Zambia, Botswana, South Africa. Yeah, those sort of places. Yeah.
And what were you there reporting on?
Well, Somalia was back in 1993. And I've completely forgotten why anybody was bothering with that place at all.
Right.
It was just an awful place. They have a drug there called cat.
Yeah.
It doesn't grow there. They have to fly in, and it's QAT, and it just makes you stupid.
Okay.
I tried it.
Okay, why not?
A bit of curiosity. I thought,
When in Rome.
When in Rome, and I thought I was all right. Then I called up a friend of mine in London. She said, "What's wrong with you?"
Yeah.
I said, "I can tune this cat." She says, "It makes it sound as thick as a plank."
Okay, so that was the end of the cat again.
That was the end of the cat. Yeah. I didn't get high or anything. I don't even know why they do it.
And this is the stuff. The Somali pirates and that are still.
That's what they're on. Yeah.
Doing that stuff, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just a stupid drug to do, and to make you stupid. But what was tough about Somalia was that the cat made you stupid, and stupid people with guns is a massive problem.
Okay.
Yeah, and CNN they had 5 of their local crew killed because someone just let off a machine gun outside the hotel.
Just shot into the hotel for no reason.
No, the drivers were outside and someone didn't like them and just shot them. Yeah, so
yeah.
And we were on the roof of the hotel, and we could sort of see what was going on, and I don't know. There was a lot of for example, we filmed a helicopter, just filming because it's there, not because, and it let off a couple of rockets. And
the helicopter let off rockets.
Yeah, let off rockets, and we got it on tape. And later on that afternoon, we were at a press conference, and the rocket had taken out a tea house. The helicopter, but they wouldn't admit it. We asked them the questions, and they wouldn't admit it.
Wow.
Yeah, so we saw you do it.
And that was.
I didn't know where the rockets went, and the instructions to the city of the route, so I don't know that it was a tea house until much later.
But it was a Somali government military that had that helicopter. Yeah.
No, it's the US.
A US military. Wow.
Yeah. On Black Hawk Down, I just find it unwatchable. I just think because I know it's factually correct and stuff like that, but it doesn't sort of get the horror of what. You sort of see them shooting and a bunch of people fall over. Yeah. Yeah, but it's not like that. It's when people get shot, they don't all die immediately. They start writhing on the ground, screaming, and it's not like a Hollywood movie at all.
No.
And I thought that was a huge injustice in the film. It just didn't treat the Somalis as human beings. And they tell the story of Americans very well, but these are just people to get shot up, and they shot up like 1,000 people. But the thing is, they just don't die immediately.
No,
and there's no hope for them. There's no hope for them
because there's no medical help.
There's nothing there for them, and I wasn't there when it happened, but I could sort of see what the situation was. We went out one day, myself and a guy called Paul Douglas, who's sadly died, was killed, and we filmed the crowd, and the Pakistani army was used under the blue helmets that were part of the UN thing, and they just opened up into the crowd with a 50 cal.
Where was this?
In Somalia, Mogadishu, and we were there, it's just a horror story, right? And this poor woman had been hit on the side of the head. And I remember looking down at her, thinking, I can't do anything for you. There's nothing I can do for you, and she's still alive. And then the crowd turned on us, and this guy hit me in the face with a rock. And I don't know if you've ever been hit hard in the face, but your knees go, your legs go. And Paul just grabbed me, just held me up, and just sort of shoved me to the car. And they were trying to push the car and overturn it and stuff, and the driver got us out of there. But I was dazed. I have no sense of how long all that took. It wasn't long, but it was. The jaw was like.
Yeah, that's getting hit in the face with a rock is.
Yeah.
Wow. And that was obviously them outraged at what they saw as
Yeah,
Western
so
killings.
Yeah, I mean, sort of that we could have been sort of, just bad things could have happened to us. I mean, we were very lucky at that time. Yeah. Thanks to Paul.
Yeah.
But the point I was making about that film Black Hawk Down is like, just there's, you're shooting the crowd, a bunch of people fall over, and it's just not like that.
Yeah. You fly away with Creed's Clearwater Revival playing and all is good.
Yeah, I think sort of like that. I mean, I know it's Hollywood and have to tell stories and stuff like that, but that sort of carnage is.
They're human beings at the end of the day that are being killed.
They'll probably never be friends of mine, but I'm like.
But they've come from a family, they've come from a tribe, an area. They're going to be missed. They might have kids, they might have parents, they have people who rely on them, people who love them, and they love people.
Yeah.
And yet in the movies, I've often thought of this myself, particularly as I've got older. As I was young, I was a fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme and all these guys and Stallone, and looking back at their movies now and thinking of like the body counters. When I was young, I thought it was cool. They were flying through, killing, shooting, bazookas, all the weapons, Schwarzenegger with the big guns, and they were just killing reams of people.
Yeah.
But nowadays, when I look back and I think that they were real people, obviously not in the movie, but what they were representing was the killing of real, actual people.
Yeah.
And it was portrayed as if these people were nothing. As soon as the bullet landed, that was it, that was over. Yeah. But as you're saying, that created a lot more suffering.
Yeah. I mean, imagine playing a video game where if you shot up a bunch of people, that you had to stick around afterwards and patch them up as best you could. Imagine that sort of video game.
That'll be good, actually. I like that.
It's just like, would video games be like that be popular? I don't think so.
They probably wouldn't.
But I wish they had them, because, people understand that you shoot at people, there are terrible consequences.
Terrible consequences, yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for that, Tom. We'll move on. No.
Mood killer.
Hey, that's exactly what we're here for. That was. There's another thing. A story you've told me before. Happened in Africa, and somebody asked you a seemingly simple question.
Oh right, yes, I know where you're going. Yeah.
So go on.
Oh, what happened was I was in Uganda, and I went up to the north of Uganda, and they just recently had the Shining Light group. No, that's Chile. I get confused. I'm getting old now.
That's okay.
No, but it's some sentence long group, and they were terrible people. But we went up there, and we didn't come into contact with them at all. We heard some terrible stories for what they did, but I didn't come into contact with them. But one night I was with the driver, who's a Ugandan guy, and I could sense that he wanted to ask me something. We're having a couple of beers and stuff, but I knew something was coming, and I didn't know what. But then he sort of finally mustered up the courage and sort of said, "So can I ask you something?" I said, "Yeah, sure, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I've been waiting all evening for you to ask me something." And he said, "Yes." He says, "Do you know where you're going to be buried?" And that thought never occurred to me in my life.
Yeah.
And I said, "No." And he goes, "It's true." "What's true?" He says, "You don't know where you're going to be buried." I said, "No, I haven't a clue." I said, "Do you know where you're going to be buried?" He says, "Well, yes."
As of course, yeah,
absolutely, of course, like 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 the village idiot or something.
Yeah.
And we just started chatting about this, and he knew right from he was born that he was going to live and that he was going to die, and that he knew where he was going to die. And I never had that feeling.
No.
And it set me on got me really thinking about the fact that if I knew all through my life that not just figuratively but literally that I knew I was going to die and this is where I was going to be put in the ground, how would I live my life differently? How do I relate to people differently? How do I relate to the world differently? Because now I think, a Western child, I think I'm going to live forever, and then the lights go off one day and I hope I won't notice.
Yeah.
That's our philosophy, isn't it, here in the West?
It's pretty nihilistic like that,
yeah,
alright, yeah. But it sounds to me like that young Ugandan chap saw himself as part of a larger cycle of life.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm like,
so
that's the whole point. It's like, sort of like, he was connected to his own death,
yeah,
and like that made life. He knew that everybody else around him was going to die. Life was finite, and that life was about living and about the people around you.
And about your relations.
Like relationships and the things that mattered to you.
And what mattered to them was
social interaction.
Social
Social structure, yeah.
Seems different to what matters to us here in the West. I mean, material things seem to be hugely important to us in the West, although they're not unimportant in places like Africa. But
the flip side of that was a young boy, just outside the capital. Outside. Not very far, 10 kilometres maybe. But he was living in a straw hut or mud hut, however you like to categorise these things. And he said, talk about football, as you normally do with a kid, a 12-year-old boy. And he said, I support Arsenal. I grew up 1.5 miles from the ground, never not supported Arsenal. No, couldn't think of it. He said, I support Arsenal too. And I said, yeah, that's great. He says, come and look. And so I went to his house and he had posters of the Arsenal team, pieces of the Arsenal team on the wall and stuff like that. And I said, and he says, yeah, it's my main thing. I like to listen to the scores and listen to the matches if I can on the radio and stuff like that. And he lived in my heart.
Wow.
And what struck me was in the conversation was that he knew so much about my life and I knew nothing about his life.
Yeah.
And all the people here over here sort of like, sort of support Galway United or whatever, they don't understand that desire to support a team or is the same as that boy's desire to support a team. It's something outside that you can get behind and stuff like that. And it's something that we share. But also his life is so different from ours.
Yeah.
And we have to appreciate that just because we have this surface kind of connection, we're not really connected below that, because his first loyalty is to his family, his children, his way of life. And although, and I've seen it elsewhere since, although I hate to say but people from sort of say developing countries know about what we have and how we have. They kind of like it. Who wouldn't? It's great. We're in a nice house in Galway and whatever. But the price they're unwilling to pay is to give up their social structures and stuff like that, because they see here in the West that we gave that up, and we're paying a terrible price for giving that up.
So it's like, look, I like the stuff you have. Of course, we like the stuff you have. The stuff that the West has built, the material gadgets.
It's fantastic.
It's fantastic, and it's been built to appeal to animals like us.
Yeah.
And they are animals like us. We're all the same in that sense. But they are like, of course we want all the stuff that you have. Who wouldn't? But I want to know where I'm going to be buried. I don't want to lose my sense of being part of a larger life cycle. I don't want to lose my sense of being part of a larger tribe, and a very real sense of death. And I guess in places like that, death isn't as hidden as it is in Western cultures. We tend to push it to the side nowadays in Western cultures.
Well, certainly, sort of coming from I grew up in England. It's sort of like when people die, they're just not around anymore.
Yeah.
And you obviously can't lament forever the passing of others, but there's also a connection that you have with those that have passed that you mustn't forget about.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them.
Yeah.
And then we come from a long line of people who survived the most terrible environments for us to be here.
Yeah.
So we need to sort of like say, our forebears may not be our cup of tea, but we wouldn't be here without them. Sort of like there's a kind of obeisance is the right word. You have to sort of like sort of say thank you very much. We wouldn't be here without you.
Yeah.
We just don't respect that respect for tradition. No, tradition's a really ugly word, right? In the West, but the tradition's terribly important because it goes from one generation to another and keeps everything connected.
Yeah.
And we say I'm all for traditions that have outlived their value to be discarded, but there are important traditions like sort of like taking care of each other and sort of like
wisdom traditions. I feel like
that's right. Yeah, that's better way of looking at it. Can I stop for a moment? I need to go to the loo.
Let's take a break, Tom. That's cool. Okay, we're back. Bladder's relieved.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No problem.
I'm pushing on now.
We even the young have bladders. What can I say? But the question of Lucy, Tom, the story you told me once about a lady I've revered since, even though I've never seen her. But the idea of her that you put in my head. Tell me the Lucy story.
Well, the background is that the background was when the Hutsis and Tutsis started butchering each other in Rwanda. Well, one did more to the other, and the other did back, I guess. But we flew into Goma, which is an awful place. No offence to the people who live there, but it's pretty awful. And it's basically built on volcanic kind of gravel, if you like, or rocks and stuff like that. And it's very inhospitable. The lake there's a big lake there, and there's nothing living in it because there's every now and then a huge bubble of methane comes up and kills everything. And so it's just an incredibly bleak, inhospitable place. And for the poor people who are escaping the pogrom in Rwanda, going from whatever. Rwanda's beautiful. Going from there to this place was just another step towards hell. And I was on the second wave. So the people who've been there before really had a tough time. I had it much easier than the crews that would be there before me. And we were there pretty much the same time. Médecins Sans Frontières was setting up a refugee camp. And these things, I really despise these ads you see on TV around Christmas time where they show some poor African child with flies flying around them, starving, and for a number of reasons. One, it's easy to get those pictures, which is tragic in itself, and it's kind of exploiting them to get people to give money, which I think is kind of wrong. It's just not the right way to do it, because these people are suffering, and to put the pictures on your TV to sort of evoke sympathy and it's so manipulative. I just despise it. Because there's a huge injustice to the people that are there, because they're real human beings and they really are suffering. They're not just objects of pity. Okay. And that's I just when I see those ads for the charity, non-NGOs, I just want to throw a brick at the TV, because I think it's morally wrong what they're doing to take money off people in that manner.
Okay,
it's okay to take money, but not that way. And I went to
just. They're taking money, but they're somehow taking whatever pride them people have left by plastering their pictures up.
I mean, it's just something morally wrong about it. And, and I think it's detestable that they do it. And, because who are they to get the money off? To get the money probably sort of poor grannies and stuff like that. Probably don't have the money to spare anyway. Sort of like, whose natural instinct is to give some money, which is totally admirable.
Yeah,
and they're just exploiting the situation. I think is evil. Okay, and obnoxious, kind of, as I said, detestable. And I was there, and so we went over to the camp to see what was going on, to just film an element for the story. Probably wouldn't be about the camp, but it would still film an element. And how these things are organised is there's basically three areas. There's a triage area. There's an area where you go where you stand a chance of being helped, and there's another area you go to where you're on the way out. And these people aren't stupid. They know when they go to the third tent, they're done for.
Because they're just not going to get the help, because
it's not going to come to them.
When it comes down to it, and you're really restricted on what provisions and medical provisions you have, decisions have to be made on who you give them to, and they're obviously going to give them more to the people they see as having a higher chance of survival.
Absolutely. You only have X amount of medicine in the truck, or bandages or whatever, medicine really, and So you knew these people. You go to this tent, and it's way worse than anything they show you on those NGO commercials. It's way worse because these, they're people just like you and me, and they know they're done for.
Yeah.
And it's a particular kind of tone, or it's not apathy. Apathy is the wrong word, but it's a kind of dreadful acceptance of their fate.
Okay.
And it's hard to be around, and we filmed, of course, and we filmed the people who are going to get treated, and they were happy, because they survived. So, great. And this one girl, she was English girl from Leeds. She's about 23 years old at the time. So her job was to basically filter people through the tents to which way to go.
So she was the decision maker.
She's the arbiter of life and death.
Wow.
And she was doing her job, and I just got talking to her. Her name was Lucy, and I said to her, is there anything you need? We've got some provisions ourselves. We can get you something. She says, what I want is a cup of tea. That sort of laughed. It was sort of like, this is. And I said, what's your story then? She said, I was trained as a nurse, and learned some French for 6 months, and here I am.
So straight from training as a nurse.
To learning a bit of French.
Learned a bit of French, and then got landed out there. Yeah,
and her job was to basically, she decided whether you're going to live or die. And she knew it, and she absolutely knew what the responsibility was, and she behaved like a real trooper. She was an absolute hero of mine, anyway. Yeah. Because would I be brave enough or strong enough to do that? Not just like for a few minutes, but all day long, day after day, and still be cheerful and talk to people normally.
And to go to bed with them decisions haven't been made. Because
of course you're going to make the wrong decisions. Of course, because we're all human. And I really hope that she doesn't get bogged down by that.
No, it's an incredibly hard position she was put in, and I've heard you talk about her before, and she seemed to accept the challenge like an absolute trooper and get on with it.
Yeah, and and I think that's she's a wonderful example of how wonderful people can be. We think we have tough lives here because we do a boring job, whatever. But how many of us would step up to the plate, put in that similar situation, and not just for a few minutes, but day after day. And all you really want is a cup of tea and a chat. Yeah. And that's sort of whenever I get a bit bleak about how terrible humanity is, I always remember her and think, that's how wonderful it can be as well. Yeah.
There's good people out there, no doubt about it. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Thanks for telling me that story, Tom, on tape. It's something that has hit me before, and I hope it has caused some reflection or some stirring of something in the listeners too.
I think it's not about the circumstances you find; it's about your response to it.
Yeah. Okay. In the introduction, I will have spoken about the day in the bar where you pulled me up on my badly formed idea of how the Berlin Wall went down.
Oh, right, yeah.
But I wonder if you'd tell the listeners about your experience of being there at that time.
It was one of the most euphoric moments of my life, periods of my life.
Really?
It must have been. It went on for a few days, actually.
It must have been. But you had got there the day before, am I right?
I got there a couple of days before, and my job was to go over to the east as a tourist, to pretend to be a tourist. It's all very Cold War. It's Cold War stuff.
Yeah, and, absolutely.
And I have a sort of tourist camera, and I was supposed to find the people who were organising protests is not the right word, were agitating at Gethsemane Church in East Berlin.
So you say you went over as a tourist. So you crossed over the Berlin Wall through the checkpoint Charlie. But you had to pretend you were doing it as a tourist, even though you were a journalist on assignment.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't the first or last time I did that.
And this was the day before or 2 days before?
Yeah, it was the day before, but a long day. Like it was early morning, and the Berlin Wall was 4:00 the next day. So it was a long day, a long next day. And just a long period of time between my arrival and me leaving.
And
even though it was only 2 days, it was
and going through that checkpoint and being in East Berlin and coming back through it, was there any sense of what was about to come?
Absolutely none.
Absolutely none.
Absolutely none. No.
And even amongst ye, the journalists, nobody had any clue what was about to happen.
No.
This is the point you pulled me up on.
The reason I left is because somebody. I was at the hotel. I checked into the hotel, and then we came down in the morning, and somebody had faxed me some stuff with headed ABC headed me printed. So like they basically just told the world I was a journalist.
Yeah. Okay.
So I left.
Oh, so you were in East Berlin, and then somebody
faxed me stuff with ABC News on the
and you said, "Time to get out of here."
Time to get out of here. Yeah.
And then the next day the wall came.
No. It's that night.
That night the wall came.
Yeah. No, what happened was that I made my way back to Checkpoint Charlie. I was going to say, can I say shitting bricks?
Yes.
Yeah, but I was sweating bullets.
Okay.
But I was deep because I grew up with the whole Cold War. I'm like, it's like this is a serious problem. And of course, it's kind of an invisible problem because there's no goons walking around or anything like that. But you knew you were in enemy territory.
Okay.
There was no safe place for me to go to. I just had to get out.
Okay.
And I never made contact with the people at Gethsemane or anything like that. I wasn't there long enough.
Right.
So it was a completely pointless thing, which also kind of burnt me a little bit because I don't mind taking risks, but for nothing.
Yeah.
So I was kind of furious as well.
Okay.
So I was anger driven. And what happened was I managed to get back through Checkpoint Charlie, and the relief was something else. And I was surprised how relieved I was, because at that time I was just thinking, get out. I wasn't thinking about how I was feeling about getting out.
Okay.
I was just thinking, get out, and then I could actually feel stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just massive relief, and like, what was I playing at? What was I even thinking about doing something like that?
And there was like people who had done what you've done and never be seen again disappeared on the other side of the wall.
Yeah, well, we know the history of Eastern Germany, the Soviet Union, socialist states. Yeah, we know it's not a good thing to end up in it.
No, absolute gulag somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I wouldn't want to be a pawn in some kind of diplomatic exchange.
Yeah,
at the very best.
And that's if you're lucky. So
yeah, if I'm lucky. Yeah, and who'd want a cameraman? I'm like, maybe I was a reporter or producer perhaps, but not a cameraman.
And so then you got back over to the other side.
Yeah, what happened was I got back over to the other side, and a guy called Alex Bruckner, who's a fantastic cameraman from Austria, he went in to replace me because they still wanted the story.
Okay.
Like, the world goes, it's not just about me. The world goes on. And so I got into the car with his other half. I was never sure whether they're married or not, but it's the other half.
Okay.
Francesca, and she's Austrian as well. Really, really nice woman. Really together. And we sat in the car, and I said to her, what should we do now? She said, I don't want to go back to the bureau, the office where we were working from. And I said, that's fine by me. I don't want to see those people either. Yeah, I might chin somebody when I get them. Yeah. And so that's fine by me. And so I sat there in the car, and the radio was on, and she just said, the wall's coming down. I said, what do you mean? She said, on the radio. And I said, the only thing we can do then is go to the Brandenburg Gate, which wasn't far. Yes, I don't know, I can't remember the distances, but it wasn't far. 10 minutes, something like that. So we drove to the Brandenburg Gate, and NBC were already there. They already had something pre-planned. They weren't there for this event.
Okay.
So they had something there pre-planned. So we weren't the first. It has to be said. I don't want to make that claim.
Yeah.
A guy called Jeff Riggins was the cameraman. He's a fantastic cameraman as well. He deserves all the credit. But from my point of view, we got there, and.
Did you have a camera with you at this day?
Oh yeah. Well, I had Alex's camera because she brought the kit with her. Yeah, and it was getting dark now. It's about 4:30. It was starting to get very cold. I remember that. And I got out, and it was like it wasn't a very good film, but the Encounters of the Third Kind. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's about like people gathering.
Yeah.
It was really a lot like that. And I was there, and I was like, I'm feeling something, I'm looking around, and people. There's no reason for people to go to that place at that time.
Yeah.
It's not on the way to anywhere, but people sort of started to turn up, and I thought, well, what's going on? And it became. And Francesca was on the phone. She said, "Listen, you've got to go down here, telling the people back in the office, this is all going down now. In German and whatever." And I was just there watching what was going on, and so she was completely brilliant. There's no question, but I was watching what was going on, and the people gathering was getting darker and darker, and I was wondering what to do. I didn't know why I was there, in a sense. I knew something was up. I couldn't figure it out. I knew the walls were coming down, but that was such an unbelievable thing.
Yeah.
I didn't.
You didn't believe it at that
I didn't believe it.
No.
It's just like, okay, we're just on a bit of a wild goose chase here.
Yeah.
Maybe. I'm not going to put my hopes on this thing. So I was like, holding back a little bit, but watching what was going on. And all of a sudden, this guy got up on the wall, on top of the wall, and I was filming him, and my heart was going much. This guy's dead.
Thought he was going to be shot off the wall.
I just thought, this guy's going to be dead. He's in focus.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's a bad joke.
He's in focus.
It's a bad joke.
Cameraman focus, is it? The cameraman joke.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's exposure, right? Don't die yet.
Okay.
Sorry, but there's a little part of your brain that does that calculation.
Of course.
That's my job after all. That's what I've been paid to do. And I was watching him, and my heart was thumping in my chest. I can remember now, just thumping, and it was like, and I didn't know what was going to happen next. I fully thought he was going to be shot, but I didn't know for sure. And these Germans put a water cannon on him, but not on him, just to the side. So because the water cannon hit you, knock you off a wall, no question.
No problem.
No problem at all.
Yeah.
But they put it to one side, so he's getting the sort of spray of it, but not the impact of it.
Yeah.
And I was just filming. This is incredible. This is really incredible. He's not dead, and they're not going to knock him off the wall. And then somebody threw him up an umbrella.
Yeah.
It was like Gene Kelly was singing in the rain. He sat there with his umbrella, and they were just pointing the water at the water.
But they didn't have the pressure turned up enough.
Oh no, the pressure turned up. It was just the spray of it. Just this hitting. This water was coming over us. It came on me. I was like, deeply regretted being that close, because I never got a chance to get dry for the next 40 hours. So I was covered in frost and ice for like 2 days.
Oh, okay.
And so but I didn't care. I was 30 years old. It was brilliant. 28 years old. Sorry. And that was it, and I just knew right then and then that it was all over.
That was the moment when they didn't wash the guy off the wall with the gun or shoot him, or that you said, okay, it's happening.
And then within half an hour, the place was packed. The story got out. People knew about it. People knew that you weren't going to die if you went to approach the wall, and people just were chiseling and hammering at it right away.
Straight away.
Within hours. Yeah.
So that moment, and whoever the guys were that were pointing that water cannon,
they knew it was over.
But they knew it was over, but they had a pivotal role in history there, no? Like they could have washed them off the wall, could have gone a different way.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's
absolutely. Yeah, they could have followed orders, but they did follow orders, but not very quickly, because it's done.
Work to rule, shall we say? Yeah.
And that feeling of being done, that feeling of relief, I think it was because I spent the next 44 hours awake in that place, and we actually shot one piece. I don't want to get technical now, but we actually shot one piece solely standing on top of the wall, just talking to people and the whole thing. And we had a fantastic correspondent.
The day before, would you have thought that was even possible to stand?
Inconceivable.
Yeah.
So that was the most magic time of my career.
Standing on top of Berlin Wall,
seeing all that happening, and it got surreal at one guy. he's like a big guy. He came over to me and says, you need to fuck off. What? He said, this is for German people. You need to go. And he took a step back, stood on some ice and fell over. It's like, I didn't hit him. I didn't. I was pretty innocent. Jess was just looking at me and said, you hit him. I didn't hit him.
Yeah, but it turns out that wasn't just for German people. That was for the whole world.
That was for the whole world. He's so wrong, that guy. He was
so wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the end of the Soviet Union, the end of the Cold War. It was immense, momentous. There's few times in history where there's one occurrence or one moment that changes so much.
Yeah. I was very lucky to be there, and everybody who was there. I'm like, I could have stopped my career at that point and been happy.
Yeah.
And, but 2 years later, 2 years later, I was at the White House in Moscow, and I was on the roof of where we were based, and we could see the White House. And
the White House in Moscow
is the place where the Duma is. It's like a horrible building, very large. That's where the Parliament is.
Okay.
Duma.
Oh, the Duma, yeah.
And people holed up in it, and there was a siege, and turned up in tank. It was kind of crazy, stupid stuff.
Yeah.
But I was on the roof, and a lot of people got killed, which nobody ever talks about.
This is when, was it Boris Yeltsin and them started firing stuff into the Duma?
That's right, yeah. I was sort of like,
got the military to attack the Duma.
That's right, yeah. The tanks were rolling through the streets of Moscow.
You were there too?
Yeah.
You were on the roof of the Duma?
No, I wasn't on the roof of the Duma. I was inside it later, but I wasn't on the roof of the Duma.
Okay.
God, it sounds like I'm bragging now.
No, it's not. This is just it, Tom. This is always the way it's been. I drag these things out again and go, you really? You were there? I think...
But I want to share a bizarre thing. I don't really like the war stories so much, but the bizarre thing was that I was on the roof, and I was filming, and there's nonsense going on. And there's all got to be quiet for a while, and sometimes nothing happens. And so I wandered to the other side of the roof, and I looked down the road, it's along Spread Street, and I saw a group of people out there. So I got the camera and filmed. And there's people queuing for pizza outside the Pizza Hut.
Wow.
All this is going on.
Yeah.
The whole revolution, as you call it in quotation marks, and people are queuing for pizza at the whatever it was, the Pizza Hut or whatever they call these things.
The life goes on.
No, but the fact is that was the West impinging. Didn't have pizzas before.
I see now. Yeah.
Yeah, and, so like it was a really significant thing to me. That was like the pizza guys won, you lost.
Oh, I get what you're saying. So yeah, the surrealness of it. So here you have the military attacking the Duma, but the real impactful revolution and the sign that the revolution has always been won is the people queuing for pizzas.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long way away. I'm like, as good as 600 meters away. I'm like, it's the end of my lens.
But you could see it.
I could see it, and I was just sort of like, oh wow, that's what's really happened here. They've lost.
They've lost.
This is the future here. Until of course Yeltsin turned. Also Putin turned.
Yeah. That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah. But there's these details that sort of give you significance, because they never used a shot in the piece or anything like that. Nobody ever commented on it. But for me, it was like that's the Cold War ended in November 9th in Berlin, but it really finished 2 years later in Moscow when people were queuing for pizza and not being worried about the Parliament being attacked.
Yeah.
Because they'd rather have the pizza than worry about the government.
Yeah, I understand.
It's very symbolic, but it's true.
Yeah. Okay, thanks again for that, Tom. I'm going to switch now to another part of the world.
All right.
To Iraq.
Oh God, yeah.
And you told me a story. I think it was on our last attempt to record this podcast. Where you were being brought around and you came to the Iraqi guards or the Iraqi top level of military. Their building had been bombed, and there was a lot of papers that you guys collected.
At the Mohabbarat headquarters, in Baghdad.
I'll let you take it.
What happened was that we got into Baghdad with the 3rd Infantry Division. I can't remember these dates anymore because it's 30 years ago. 20 years ago, actually, 20 years ago. And we got in really soon after, not the same day, but I think the next day. And we obviously went looking for stories, and so obviously looked for government things first. Infrastructure, government. What happened to who's running the place.
Yeah.
How's it working now? And so so we went to the Air Force building, which was nearby, and that's pancaked.
Okay.
Bombs had done that. We went to one other place, and it was equally unpromising. We went to the Muhabbarat headquarters, and they'd dropped a bomb called a JDAM right down the centre of the building. So, if you imagine, it was like an apple being decored. Chances of surviving were very little, and so there's lots of paperwork just spread out everywhere. Maps and stuff. Maps and documents lying around. So, one of our intrepid members of our party gathered up all this stuff. I wasn't doing it. I was just filming, and so so we didn't really pay much attention. And we got back in the car, and somebody made the usual comment, "Oh, this is all about oil," So then we said, "Well, why don't we go to the oil ministry? To see it for ourselves, because we could."
Yeah.
And who else is going to see it? And so let's go. So we went there. American troops had surrounded it. The only place that was absolutely nailed down, secured entirely, that we couldn't get into
was the oil ministry. It
Yeah.
shows their priorities, which
Absolutely.
people are well aware of now.
Yeah. And I went to a few days later. I went to a press conference, and then we did an interview with this colonel, and he was just really proud of showing us the fire control system, what do they call it? Fields of fire for protecting an oil rig. It's like,
Yeah.
what's going on?
Yeah.
It's so it's so obviously about oil, wasn't?
Yeah.
And we established that as well, because in those papers that were picked up at the Muhabbarat headquarters, they came back, and I'm compressing the timeline here slightly, but they were eventually translated, and in one of them was a letter that had recorded there's only one meeting between Al Qaeda and Saddam Hussein. So there was and they didn't like each other.
But this was used as a link between Al Qaeda and Saddam in some circles to justify the invasion, basically. The war.
Well, pre the invasion, they said there was a strong link.
Yeah.
So and it turns out there was only the slightest link.
The slightest link.
Yeah, Mark would write a letter to Saddam. Really, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And I'll tell the rest of the story off mic.
No problem. No problem, Tom.
But going back to the Saddam, the Iraq thing. I love America, and my grandmother's American, my brother's American, so I have no problems with America in itself. I'm part American myself. But what really, really, really troubled me, and this is what we're going to get onto the philosophical side of it, is the fact that the supremacy of technology to solve problems that may not actually need to be solved.
Mm.
And what I'm talking about here is that the Iraqi civil service were paid manually in chits and things and paperwork, and involved a lot of people, and a lot of people got paid. It's very unwieldy, and to our eyes unwieldy and difficult. But what it was it worked, and every week people got paid. Not much, but to live on. And we're talking about 600,000 people here, not like me and your uncle and stuff like that. We're talking about a substantial part of the population, dependent on the paycheck from the government, and it was done in the way it's probably done for hundreds of years, just by signing pieces of paper, shipping them down the corridor. Somebody else signs it, and somebody writes it, and you get paid. And it's all very arcane, if you like. And the idea was that we're going to do away with all that. We're going to get some computers. Now, anybody who's been anywhere near an IT system knows that they're crap. They never work first time. They only work second or third time, and most of the times they limp along, supporting the system or the company or whatever. IT systems are rubbish, and it's really. It
certainly would have been back then, anyways. If they may have improved somewhat. Now.
Yeah, and we didn't have, they had networks and stuff like that, but it was still primitive by our standards. And even today, we still have the bad habits of the IT people back then. Sorry, IT guys, but it sucks. You're rubbish. And you're the backbone of the modern world, and you don't do a good job.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
live with it. And what happened was that, of course, it didn't work. It didn't work the first time, second time, or any of the implementations. But okay, we'll get back to it. We'll reboot it and start again. The problem was people weren't getting the money and getting paid, so there was no food. There was massive problems on the street. When, as I said, 600,000 people, not just a couple of hundred people or a couple of thousand. And these are people who naturally had no alternative but to rise up against the American occupiers, because from their point of view, Saddam was bad, but these guys are taking away their meal, food, en masse.
So as bad as Saddam was, they were getting fed. They were getting a few bob.
And if you stayed away from that, the whole Saddam thing, you could actually stand a chance of living a reasonable life.
Yeah.
But no, you had no life because you had no money.
And
that's what kicked it all off.
That's what kicked off the uprising, the backlash.
Yeah. But nobody likes to talk about it, but that's what happened, and that's how it went down.
That's why
and Halliburton were criminals. They should all just be taken to the Hague and hung.
Halliburton.
Oh yeah. Dick Cheney is just an evil motherfucker.
Yeah.
Sorry, you can sue me. You know where I live.
Yeah, no, I think there's been documentaries and movies made about that. I don't think you're going to be sued, Tom. I think it's it's pretty out there what happens now with the American military and the likes of Halliburton going in fixing what they've destroyed and taking all the.
But to take the terrorist point of view, you can sort of see from their point of view that technology works, it makes things better, as an absolute fact. And technology doesn't, as we know from climate problems and stuff like that, technology doesn't always make everything better.
No.
It makes some things better, but always comes at a cost.
Yeah, there's always unintended consequences there. And I think, and I've definitely got this from talking to you, is that the hubris of the West to think that everybody wants to be like us.
Yeah.
To think that, this is how we do it, so
it's
we'll
a
go.
massive problem.
It's a massive problem.
This is something I'm like, if you sum up my 28 years doing that stuff, it's like, the one thing, I'm like a scratched record, but we've heard me time and time again, it's the fact is that just because we think about the world the way we do doesn't mean that other people think about the world in the same way at all.
Yeah.
They may share some of the same ambitions for a nice house or a nice car, but beyond that, there's fundamental differences in how people see the world, and they're ingrained cellular level differences. And
they're not necessarily wrong or right. It's not in that realm of right and wrong.
Yeah, one of the things that puts me off a lot of psychology stuff is the fact that it's so Western based.
Absolutely.
You sort of take a lot of those experiments that kind of, the psychological experiments, and do them, say, in the Indus Valley, or you do them in the say some other places in India, or you do them in sort of deepest Africa, or you're going to get totally different results. Guaranteed. And yet we sort of accept these psychological truths as real truths.
Yeah.
And it's wrong. It's simply wrong. It's just not how. Just because somebody likes a car who lives in a mud hut doesn't make him like us.
No.
Yeah, and we shouldn't assume that. And we do go around assuming that, because we sort of share the same level of things, that we share the same attitude to life. Things in life aren't the same thing.
And we tend to think, and this I would argue is overwhelmingly the way things have gone since the Enlightenment, is we tend to think the society, the civilization that has the power is correct, is right.
Might is right, yeah.
It is a might is right situation. So because they can dominate, they're automatically right.
Yeah.
So I feel like we still go the Western world. I don't take Ireland out of that context.
Not at all.
We still go to these other parts of the world with the idea, hey, look, we're right. We can demolish your whole village if we want to. Of course we're right. We're the powerful ones.
Yeah.
What does right mean in this context? I mean, you can think about this as Cortez and the rest of the guys going down to the European colonizers that went all over the world. And because we had the power, we had weaponry, we had technology to sail, we had armour and different weapons that we could attack and overpower the indigenous tribes. We have lived as if we done that because we were right. There was
We had God on our side. It was the traditional way. Yeah.
But we had God on our side. But there's nothing about Western civilization that gives us any moral superiority to indigenous tribes anywhere.
Not inherent, no.
No,
not inherently, no.
But we still somewhere carry the seed of that rightness because of might, of that rightness because of technological capabilities. That we think because we're more technologically able, we're obviously better. When, to my mind, it's fairly obvious that when it comes to the environment, it's not the technologically savvy people that are doing anything good to the planet. I mean, the lower in scale.
No, right, yeah. So,
there's places in the middle, but if you go right down to the people who are living in the Amazon rainforest and indigenous tribes in all parts of the world who are living in the same way as they have for thousands of years, not many left, granted. We might look at those people as stupid and as less. And many people in the West do. But people living like that are not the ones who have caused the sixth extinction event. They're not the ones who have poisoned the seas and the rivers.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the ones who have caused climate change to a large extent. It's the other side. It's the technologically savvy side. Now, I'm not saying we're not using technology for good things in our attempts to combat the climate problems.
With most of modern medicine, I'd be dead at 6. Yeah, I wouldn't have made it this far. So thank you. No, the point is, it's just the thoughtless application of the technology, but that's sort of incorporating into a greater, wider ecosystem. It's like we do things because they're inherently good because it's technology, and therefore things are going to get better. That's the argument with the Sam Altman and the OpenAI guys the Horowitz people, Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z people say, they had a manifesto last year saying, technology, we have to be optimistic about it, it's going to save the world and stuff like that.
These are OpenAI.
OpenAI, Sam Altman, the A16 people are a venture capital company.
Okay.
Mark Andreessen came up with Netscape, I think, about 25 years ago. So he's relevant, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But the point I'm making is that it's just this unquestioned idea that technology in itself is an undoubted good. There are good parts about it, but it's always at a cost. We always have to evaluate that cost. But we always think that the cost is going to be like so much less than the benefit that we think. But the problem is that the cost is sometimes equivalent or worse than the benefit. We sort of like, all right, the great ones, electric cars, for example, right? Everyone thinks, unqualified good. I went to Zambia and I went to those copper mines, and it's an unqualified bad as far as I'm concerned.
Go into that a bit more.
What's
happening in Zambia?
Well, no, because there are these copper mines that are mainly mined by the Chinese.
Is that cobalt too? Has that been coming from?
I'm not really into geology too much, but I just went to a copper mine.
Okay.
So I don't really know. And they were obviously getting copper to put in our cell phones and stuff like that. And but I went to a mined out copper mine that couldn't be done. Wasn't efficiently able to be done by trucks and drills and scoops and stuff like that, and so they moved on to another location, but there was still sort of copper back at the original site. So we went back to the original site, and people were digging tunnels without props, mine props, and it was sandy soil. And they were digging it out, and whatever little scraps of copper they could get, it was how they would make their living.
Who would they sell that to? Who would they get?
They'd send it to people who then send it onto the main market. And into middlemen.
And you're
and that was just, nobody should have to do that to put some food on the table. And was there any sort of like, or Apple or Samsung or any of these people coming back to that mine, that community? These are people. and saying, we're going to build you some nice houses. We're going to sort of take care. I know this. We're going to build some schools. That's not happening at all. And when sort of Tim Cook and all these people go, or Jeff Bezos and sort of, or Elon Musk, it's like, come on, your whole thing is based on modern day slavery. It's evil.
And that's another, like the point that you made at the start there.
Not that I'm against what they're doing, but I think there's a really bad aspect to it.
And that there's a cost to each benefit, and not only that the cost can outweigh the benefit, but the benefit is very much in front of us because all the benefits are advertised to us. All the benefits come across our screens, and they're being sold to us in one way or another. The costs, however, are not necessarily in our line of sight, and they're not necessarily for the Western world. I mean, the Southern Hemisphere has taken the vast chunk of costs when it comes to the copper mining and cobalt mining and all the different South America and copper mines has a terrible history there too. So while the Northern Hemisphere, Western world, however you want to phrase it, gets most of the benefits and they're very visible, the costs seem to be left to the less well off and are far less visible. Is that fair?
Well, I mean, you wouldn't want to call any of these people racist, but what you would want to call them is inhuman, because I was there for a couple of days, but I was at the end of the day filming. I was going back to the car, just packing my stuff up, and this kid that I'd sort of seen around, I hadn't talked to him, but he's around. He came over to me, and he was like 16, and the way he spoke and the way he held himself was a person of dignity and intelligence.
This was a kid that had been in the mine.
And this kid that had been in the mine, And when you sort of like see it as these people as individual human beings, not just sort of dark Africans in the middle of nowhere that nobody's ever going to see, except for people like me, occasionally once every 10 years.
Yeah.
And I know when I'm sort of reflective enough that, my phone, my computer comes from people like this guy, who was just like me, but in the wrong place at the wrong time. Nothing to do with intelligence, nothing to do with being born in America, though, for somehow especially privileged, which is sort of very obnoxious to listen to sometimes. Not European, with our sort of cultural heritage and stuff like that, that we sort of like are very snobbish about, and probably need to sort of take a reality check on that as well.
Yeah.
It's just like you, me. He'd sit this guy, just like they're human beings.
Yeah.
Again and again and again. The one thing I learned from, I talked about Black Hawk Down earlier. It's like, those aren't extras falling over. Those are human beings who've just been shot, and in real life they're going to be lying and suffering terribly before they pass.
Yeah.
These are real people.
Yeah.
And it's like they can greenwash however much they like, which I think is criminal. Because what they really should be doing is taking all the vast amounts of money, going back to those communities that they're destroying, and saying, let's help you out. You've done us a great service. You made us a lot of money. Let's help you out. Doesn't cross their fucking minds.
Doesn't cross their balance
Sorry
books.
about the language.
It doesn't cross their balance books, I'm afraid, Tom.
Yeah.
That's what it doesn't cross the balance books. Yeah. No.
But I mean, sort of, I mean, expanding upon that is sort of why do we have this situation now? And sort of like, one of the things that I've been around a lot of communities that are tribal. In the East End of London, where I grew up, people are very tribal. You're more loyal to your community than you are to the cops.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit here as well, as you know.
Yeah.
And I've always been fascinated by that aspect, is the fact that this community stuff, like the Taliban, right or wrong, they did what they needed to do to survive, using the structures and information that was available to them.
Yeah.
I don't agree with them at all, but they did, from their perspective, it was the right thing to do. And part of that was because they were so socially interlinked, and the fact they survived was because they stayed together. And now in the West, we have this situation where people are becoming so. I'm all for individualism. I'm an individualist capitalist myself. There's no, I won't quibble on that point. But when you become too individualistic, when it becomes all about you become isolated, and you become atomized, and you're not operating within your social structure properly, and you become weak, and you can become depressed. The suicide rates here in Ireland and elsewhere, as far as I can gather, are shooting through the roof. This is because people they have substituted the technological benefits for real human contact.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really a terrible price to pay for being able to go onto Twitter or Threads or Instagram. It's a terrible price to pay for just a bit of entertainment, because it's not just a bit of entertainment, it's a distraction from the people that matter, which are around you.
Yeah.
And when I was at college with you, I was standing in the corridor one day and there was a girl next to me and she was texting, and I wasn't really paying any attention, but the girl opposite was texting, and then I realised after a little bit they were texting each other. I thought, that's just insane. No, they're 10 feet apart. Why are they texting? Maybe they didn't want me to hear the conversation, but I mean, that's still insane. And that's a really bad indicator of where people are going. It's like you're more real on your phone to each other than you are in real life to each other, at close distance. And people like Lucy, are dealing with real people. Yeah, they're not numbers or
avatars
or stuff like that. It's not a game that you can play, or you have to stand there with your heart and your mind and your experience and your education, and you live, you die. And then you've got to be a human being after that as well.
Yeah, and interact with the rest of the world.
Yeah, and sort of like, I worry that my children's generation just don't have that sense of the importance of bonding.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like good or bad, like we need to work out what we're going to do, and we need to work out how to do it together if we're going to solve our problems. And not all our problems are going to be solved by the same thinking that created them. So,
as in the
scientific method.
The scientific method, yeah, but the instrumentalization of everything. The Ian McGilchrist idea of the left side, right side of the brain, and how the right side of the brain has become more dominant.
That's right. Yeah, fantastic.
And
fantastic idea. I love it.
Yeah, how they and the for a quick scan the right side of, is it the right side of the brain?
The right brain there. So the basic idea with Ian McGilchrist is that he discovered or observed from very old, very primitive animals from millions and millions hundreds of millions years ago, that always there was a neural separation between the brains. And in most animals and birds, it's actually separated. In the human beings, we have a corpus callosum that joins them together, which is kind of unique. But the purposes of each side of the brain was not like the Roger Sperry stuff of the 60s, which one side was artistic, one other side was mechanical. But the purpose was that it was nature's way of solving the problem of how do you eat something and not get eaten yourself. So you would have one brain that was just focused on a very small, narrow part of the world, which was the food that you're about to pick up. And another part of your brain was just aware of everything that was going on around you. So the slight disturbance. And we see that with birds when you sort of throw seed at them, they gobble away at any disturbance, they fly off en masse. And from that, he suggests or argues really well that, sort of like we've developed over time into this amazing function that the left brain and the right brain are joined together. So we have this left brain part of the left brain part, left side part of our brain that's devoted to, not devoted to, but because the spread between the two, but mainly devoted to sort of grasping things. That means that it has to have a very strong sense of the material world to grasp things, to get food.
Mm-hmm.
But we have another part of the brain, the right side, that's sort of geared towards sort of detection and being aware of what's going on around us.
And having it has a better grasp of the holistic view of things, should we say?
That's right, yeah. And and we see this every day as humans. Like, you walk into a room, like for most normal people, you get a vibe right away of what the room's about.
Yeah.
Unless your right brain, working in tandem with your left brain, but
Yeah.
it's
It's
getting the big picture.
The left brain tells you where the door handle is. The left brain tells you how to switch the light on. The left brain does all the small things, but the right brain keeps it in context, I guess. Keeps a hold of the larger context.
Yeah, it keeps it. Keeps the big perspective. Yeah,
and that could be seen as a global context.
Yeah.
And what McGilchrist argues, and what I think we're arguing here, is that where the left brain, the emissary as he calls it,
that's right. Yes, yeah,
is becoming far too dominant.
That's right. Yeah, he argues it really well in his book, The Master and the Emissary. Yeah,
And,
he documents it throughout history until the part, like say, during the Renaissance period, it's very clear that people were expanding their minds because there's all sorts of colours introduced and perspectives introduced and things like that into art and work. You can see it, and now we've got to the stage where you have pictures on the wall, and you have to have the artist write on a little piece of card beside it what it's all about. It's not there for you to interpret; it's there to be explained. Which is a very left brain activity.
Yeah, I think.
One of the reasons that most modern art is so crap is because you have to be told what it means. If you look at a picture, a great picture. I remember I was at a place at an exhibition at the Tate Gallery, and I was walking through it, and one picture just jumped out at me, and I said, "Wow, so much visual stimulus there." But this one picture was alive, and it was a Jackson Pollock picture. It's like, that's fantastic. That's why he's a great artist.
Yeah,
because it's alive, living. You understand it, even though it's abstract. Doesn't mean it's not understandable or relevant.
Impactful.
But
I think seeking to understand it might be not part
pointless.
of the right brain's purpose either. That purpose might be the wrong word. But the left brain is what seeks understanding and what seeks explanation and categorization and practicality and utilitarian ideals. But I like to be analogous about the left brain and the right brain. I see the left brain.
Sorry, everybody.
I see the left brain as operating as the American military. So the American military is the emissary. It goes and does the bidding, and the people are what the master. So the American military is always subservient to the government because the government is in power and the government represents the people. So you can see that as the master. Supposed to have a holistic view of everything.
Right, yes.
And the military is operating as the emissary. So they are going out and doing the bidding of the master.
Yeah.
So what if the military, the left brain, as McGilchrist seems to suggest, almost detaches itself from the master, says, you know what, I'm actually good. I know everything. I don't need this holistic view, this idea. I'm good.
What's that birth of fascism there, isn't it?
Yeah, but that seems to be kind of the pure instrumentalized ideals that we're coming up with now. And then the specialization in subjects. Like I know you studied philosophy and you studied classics and you studied a lot of these things, but most of college now seems to be like a conveyor belt, an instrumental conveyor belt. You're going to college. What do you want to be? I want to be something in IT. I want to be a banker. Okay, here's the course. You do it, and that's it. Very few people go to college. What do you want to be? I just want to be better. I just want to learn more about the world.
Well, I think so. From my university experience, and I think I may have shared this with you before, is that the humanities is really important. I think you made the joke. I know you did. Philosophers tell you what to. Engineers can make anything, but the philosophers will tell you what to make. I think you said it.
Yeah, I think I saw it as a meme.
Yeah. But I remember you saying that, and I thought that's very accurate, actually.
Yeah. Engineers can tell us what we can do, and philosophers should tell us whether we should or not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's very good. Yeah, I always remember that. And, I thought, that's it.
It's the emissary and the master too. I see that as that kind of relationship.
Yeah, but the thing is, just sort of go back on your story there. It's like we have to have them working together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I worry about, as I said, the atomization and the individualism, because that leads to suicide. Because if you don't have a community, you're by yourself, and you're a very unique person if you can stand out for very long. Now, the solitary confinement is the worst punishment in prison for a reason.
Exactly.
For a reason.
So even in prison with the worst people in the world, we'd rather be in social interactions than be alone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So so it's no laughing matter. It's very serious, and the suicide rates are a testament to the fact that we're losing the ability to just, I was back in when I was a kid back in Connemara. I've lost the accent now, but when I was a kid back, we had a local character called John Diamond, and he was just. I wouldn't know how to classify him now, but he was the guy that. What happened was, I won't describe him actually. I'll tell you what he did. What he used to do was just wander around and wander into people's houses, and people would give him bread and a cup of tea, and he had no sense. He always have a jacket and a shirt, no matter what the weather. And he'd come into our house, and mother would always just give him a cup of tea and a slice of bread or whatever, and. He'd go on and he'd go to the next house, and that's how he survived.
Wow.
Not in a cynical, clever way at all, because he was a bit simple, right?
Yeah.
But the community as a whole just took care of him
and looked after him.
And he lasted a very long time. I think he only died just 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. Because the community took care of him. He wasn't able to take care of himself.
Yeah.
He didn't have the sense, but he and I think that magic has gone. It's disappearing.
Yeah.
And sort of like all the places I've been to, all these so-called developing countries, these so-called third world countries, which we're not supposed to say anymore, but all these countries that we sometimes find a label to separate us from, the one thing that sort of is very consistent is the sense of community, that people look after each other. And what you see here, that's developing more and more, is the fact that people don't look after each other, look out for themselves. They stop acting as though they're in a community. They claim their own individualistic thing, which is only the last thing they've probably read on the internet. And they're isolating and atomizing themselves, and that leads to a terrible problem of disassociation from the community that you're supposed to, or that would help you.
It's what the philosopher Charles Taylor calls deviant individualism.
Yeah, but it's not deviant, it's predictable, because it's happening. It's the inevitable consequence of people just living on their iPhones.
But I guess his argument is that...
Sorry, I missed it.
No problem. Individualism has brought a lot of good things about. Has brought individual rights and freedoms and stuff that we all that we all buy into, and nobody hears argument against that.
Of course not. No. But I don't want other people brainwashing me.
Yeah, but of course. But there is a level we seem to be surpassing, where people think everything is about the individual, and where things begin and end with the individual.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Taylor was getting at when he's saying individualism is necessary, but what we've got now and what we're heading further into is a deviant form of that individualism. So it's not the helpful progressive type of individualism anymore. It's turning into something regressive.
Yeah. It's something counterproductive to the aims of what we have to assume that we're always trying to build a better society in our own little ways, in our own little contributions, either through the ballots, or through our inventions, or through our activities in the community. But all those are predicated on the fact that we're actually doing them in a communal sense.
Yeah.
Once we start doing them stuff in an individual sense, like if I start just doing some computers for myself, okay, I'll probably make some gains, probably get a nice house and stuff like that. But what else do I have?
What's that worth?
Yeah, what's that worth? And when people die, you don't sort of say, "Oh, he had a great BMW."
Yeah.
Nobody ever says that.
No, nobody ever
says.
This
is, he was either well loved or no, he's a bit lonely, but they always talk about it in terms of relationship, never in terms of what you own.
I've actually never seen that on a gravestone. BMW 3.2i owner.
Yeah, exactly.
It just doesn't. Yeah, no, but it's not how we're remembered.
No, this is not how we talk about it. It's not how we when you're, I'm much older now, and all I really care about is my children and my friends. I don't really care about a car or a house. I need a house and a car to get by.
Yeah.
Because it's cold and wet up here. But I mean, I don't dream about it. I mean,
yeah.
When I was a teenager, I'd love to have my own house, my own car, and be a big guy. But like that fades when your sort of like relationships become more and more important.
Yeah.
And they're very easy to lose if you don't work at them.
Yeah.
And what the technology like, Instagram and all this social media stuff is, it takes the work out of relationships.
Makes things easy. And
like Tinder, for example, stuff like that. Straight hookup.
Tinder is eBay for humans, and I don't care what people say. That's what we're doing. We're putting ourselves up there on shelves with descriptions underneath. And I'm sorry, it's just too much like eBay.
Yeah, I'm like going back to descriptions underneath. This is really another thing to say. I think I mentioned to you before was that I heard somebody describe somebody else as a millennial.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like really upset by it, and I couldn't figure out why was I upset. And I was just walking along thinking, this is really a troublesome thing. And then I realised that these categories were developed by brand managers in an advertising agency. They're just a way of categorising human beings so other people can make money out of you. And for you to actually take that language and oppose it on your fellow human beings, it's insane. Yeah. You're taking a step towards, I'm a millennial, I'm not Generation Z. It's like, who cares?
Yeah.
Who absolutely cares about any of that?
Yeah.
A brand manager and advertising agency, that's their job.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That's not a problem. You walking down the street and calling somebody else another, or a boomer or whatever, that's you being a biased, prejudiced, ignorant motherfucker.
Yeah, I get you.
And it's evil, and it's really a bad way to go. So drop all that kind of language about categorising other people.
There's something you said to me, Tom, before.
Sorry about the language, though.
Don't worry about it. There's something you said to me before about your experiences in Africa and these other places and experience and time with people who lived in tribes, and you were getting the point across to me that although they might want the stuff that we have, they do not want to be us.
Yeah,
and you said that it took 200 years for us to be conditioned into this work life that we have now. They don't want that. And that was something that you said that made me reflect. It's like, oh yes, we actually have been conditioned into this way of life, into thinking that this is the proper way to live, and that we should be working in a box 8 hours a day, and then having our enjoyment at 2 days prescribed at the weekend, and then back to the grind again. And to people in the West, that just seems normal. That actually doesn't seem normal. That seems right. If you're doing that, most people feel like they're living right. But for other people in many other parts of the world, that's an insane system. That's like, why would you live like that?
See, I mean, like, when I was one of the great things I studied at the university was classics, and the guys at University of Galway are just fantastic. If you ever want to do a classics course, go there. And but one of the things you learn right away is that the way we think now about ideas like democracy and stuff like that was all thought out and worked out and developed 2,000 years ago, and those ideas survived long enough for people like they survived in the population long enough for developments like the Industrial Revolution to take place, and that was all built upon the fact that even though they were wrong about science in a specific sense, they were right about it in the sense that everything could be sort of logically argued and developed from there. That reason was the fundamental cause of the Industrial Revolution, and the Enlightenment was the appreciation and understanding that we can reason things. Like from Descartes, that's one beautiful piece of work on just pure reason. You don't have to subscribe to it or agree to it. But you have to understand that it gave a framework for thinking that reason is a good thing. Reason itself, devoid of what you're reasoning about, is a good thing.
Yeah.
And so you had and you end up with the schools in northern Germany in the late 1800s. They were just fascists, and they built the schools to get the boys to become good soldiers in the military and be good workers in the factory, and sort of have some administrative skills, so they had to teach them to read and write. And and all our desks are sort of like in a line, and it's totally unnatural way of. You don't see that in a the other in a natural I hate the whole terminology surrounding this. It really bothers me. I haven't really sort of worked it through, but I'm like, in different societies, like people sit around and just chat together, and they sort of see their whole bodies, and it's in a circle usually. Here we are regimented in rural rows, and this is how it's going to be for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And if you stay regimented in rows, the promise is that you get the house and the car. And the house and the car are great, but I'm like, that's just not the thing to be aiming for in life.
But I guess we talk to the people in the circles. We're like, yeah, but if you give all this up, you can have the house and the car. And a lot of them were like, the house and the car is cool, but you can keep it. I'm good. Yeah. I'm good. We don't get it. We're like, how do you not want the house and the car? The American dream.
Yeah, I think we're so embedded in the culture, and the problem is that sort of myself included. Our natural instinct is to think that technology is good because we see so many benefits from it, and we don't quite see what the price is that we pay for it. I've sort of seen it in Africa myself, and we pay a tremendous human cost for this stuff that keeps us in contact with each other. And I think we can't go back. We can't put the
genie back in the bottle,
but we can do something to make things right.
Yeah, we can adapt.
And we make enough money. We can go back there and sort this out overnight.
Yeah.
Why don't we do it? I don't know. And I think the reason it's not because of ignorance. It's because it's just not salient. And the problem is we're on a path of trying to fix the problems like climate change and everything else like with the same thinking that caused it. And we'll go back to Ian McGilchrist here.
Doubling down on eco-modernism approach.
Yeah, and sort of saying no. That's technology caused all these problems in the environment. Didn't need to. Nobody could predict it. I'm like, you can't fault people for this, right? But but now we can.
Yeah.
We know.
Well, we've been going on about it for at least 70 years, and there's cases of over 100 years ago. It was noticed a Swedish physicist talked about that.
Oh, sure, yeah. And there's always sort of people who sort of who once could see what was coming, but but as a popular movement, as a sort of general level of raising the consciousness, it's still not there yet to the point.
I don't think it's there. What I think is the biggest problem, and I've said this in a paper somewhere, but is that what we really have to ask people for, and I do not think people are capable of doing anymore, is suffering. Now, when I say suffering, I don't mean we're getting needles in the arms. I mean, we're not going to have grapes from Chile. I mean, we're not going to fly on 2 holidays a year.
Right.
I mean, we're not going to have all clean clothes all the time and be able to use all the chemicals that we have free access to now for everything, for cleaning our walls or cleaning whatever we like. We're not going to be able to ring up and have any food we want delivered to the door. By coming down on these things, reducing our standard of living, reducing the complexity of our society, that would now be called suffering. It doesn't need to be, but that is a hard sell, and that is especially a hard sell if you're a politician trying to get into a position that you might be able to make a difference. So I don't see how democracy in the way we have it set up is going to be able to sell this change, because how are we going to sell people to have less when we've conditioned them and indoctrinated them into this greed is good world that we've had since the 80s at least? How do we change these people's minds to say, actually, suffering now, it might not even be good for you, but if we can suffer a little bit now, we might allow generations into the future to prosper, to flourish, however you want to say.
Well, a couple of things. One is that I'm a bad example in the sense that I thrived on challenges and stuff like that. But I do notice that people don't want to be challenged. They don't want to be physically challenged. I'm the chairman of a gym in west of Galway, and we have a devil of a time getting people in. And there's people my age and they should know that the best anti-aging thing to do is to go to the gym.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. The debate's over.
Yeah.
And we just don't see them. And people know that they should be there. They know they should be eating right. Sort of like, why don't they do it? And I think it's because they don't see other people doing it. It's not they just hear about it, but they don't sort of, it's not salient in their lives. It's not culturally relevant yet. All I can hope for is that as time goes by, and the next bunch of 50-year-olds will take to the gym or whatever.
Yeah.
But going back to Ian McGilchrist, and I think it's really important what he says is that our society is built on this left brain materialistic thinking, and there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is it hasn't incorporated our more expansive right brain thinking, and I think of that in a practical way as the listening part. And the reason I say that is because I noticed that a lot of, with all the social media, is that there's very little listening going on. And one of the things I've learned, in my years, is that when you go to these places, I go to these places and I don't speak the language and stuff like that, but I try and listen. And everything that's ever got me out of trouble is just by just staying calm and listening to what was going on, not by arguing, not by pleading, never by begging, fuck that, but just by just listening.
Yeah.
And I think Ian McGilchrist is. I just did that experientially as a tactic, as you like, but it worked. But I think he's on the right track in saying that sort of like the first step is that to just appreciate that there is something other than the material life. Right. I'm very eager to read a book by Robert Sapolsky about determinism. Because it's because that deterministic argument is ultra materialistic. That it's only about things and how things bounce off each other and stuff like that. But I don't think that's true. I simply don't think that's true. I think we live in a probabilistic world where you sort of like we have things aren't preordained and that we have a choice. And like to sort of say it's all deterministic. It's like, well, I was reading a thing about Harun. Sorry, I've forgotten him. I'm sorry. The Babylonian king, Harumarabi.
Okay.
Yeah, Harumar. And this is just after our last conversation, and he introduced two really important ideas. It's like, up until that time, I'm talking about 1200 BC or 1400 BC, if you had a problem, something did wrong, the law was set up to compensate you, to make things better for you. When this guy came along, which I can't pronounce,
Haramarabi.
Thank you very much. He introduced two things. One is the presumption of innocence, which is fantastic. It's an amazing invention. But the other side was that the emphasis on justice should be on persecution of the guilty.
Okay. So retributive justice.
Yeah, and so he had this fantastic idea, and I think, and we're so embedded in this sort of idea of paying, you pay a price for your sins. That what must have been like beforehand, before he introduced this code, that come down through the centuries to the Greeks, to us, like we live by it. It's part of Christianity that you're going to go to hell.
Yeah.
But what if you didn't have that? What if you had the fact that any justice was about compensation? And I'm just working through the idea at the moment, but it's like, if somebody did wrong, maybe it should not be so much about locking them up somewhere, but sort of trying to recompense you in some way.
Make amends somehow.
Yeah, sort of like sort of working out some other way. But we're so locked into this idea of punishment for bad doing that we don't think there can be another way. But apparently, in history, it was another way up until that point. And we're talking like tens of thousands, maybe millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years, not millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years. That was, and we'll talk about you talk about narrative as well, stuff like that, and then sort of the really interesting thing about narrative is that this is something for you. I mean, it's like it's very. I think you have to be careful not to have narrative as in isolation, but to view it as a relationship. And and my evidence for this is that if you look at the works of Chaucer, then at Shakespeare, then at the dictionary written by Samuel Johnson, only like 110 years later, maybe that 110 years, 17, about that, yeah, and how much language changed just in that very, very short period of time, and people were writing it down and codifying it.
Yeah,
and so that must mean all those years ago that language is a dynamic aspect of our life, that maybe it shouldn't be codified to the extent that it is. Maybe it should just be okay, this things will change over time, and we accept that. Grammar Nazis are just stupid people, right? Because it's always going to change.
Yeah, and language has always and will always be changing.
But because it's a changing thing, it's almost like a living thing. That means it's something that we can have a relationship with, rather than have something that's imposed or constructs our daily lives in a very firm and direct way. Do you see where I'm going with that? It's like it's not like I know what you're saying is very important about narrative, but I think it's sort of as part of a large dimension of relationship and connection and development and evolutionary adaptation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe you should explain what you mean by narrative. So
that's going to be a whole podcast, and I'm not sure the word narrative fully explains it either. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think we give enough emphasis to language being what makes humans special, if we are special, and that there's a massive downward force from language onto humans. So we come into a world, now this is of course not my ideas, this has come through the existentialists and that, but we're thrown into a world of language, of concepts that we have had no influence in making, really, at least not individually. And when we come into the world, we learn language, and through that language we get concepts in our brain. We visualize the world through these concepts. We grasp the world through words. I think it was Lacan that talked about the very first time a child recognizes itself in a mirror, and a parent is pointing to the child saying, "You, me, you, and me." Mm-hmm. And this is a moment of change where the child can point to something and say, "You and me."
Separation, yeah.
And it's that moment of atomization comes, and that's impossible without language. Mm-hmm. And I think that the left side of the brain that McGilchrist talks about, that's impossible without language. Our grasping of the world, our like the right side of the brain has the holistic view. The left side of the brain is able to take concepts and take ideas and shift them around and come up with calculations, and it has a temporal existence, as in we have a biographical existence, we have a story that we're within. We all have our own story. We all find our own place in a story, in a narrative that's constantly, as you say, it's living, it's alive. The story of me, mm-hmm. and the story of me and the story of you are now together in some way, and then possibly our stories might influence the listeners. Mm-hmm. So this is all in the world of language. This is all in the world of concepts that is impossible without language. I do not think like everything is narrative, and I still haven't fully worked out this. Part of the process of this podcast is to help me get a PhD proposal together.
Absolutely.
So I'm still thrashing through this myself, but and I was warned before, stay away from the philosophy of language. Once you go in, you'll never come out. And I feel like I've gone in, and I'm worried that I'll never come out because I can't find the door. Right. But But I think that there's some things with language. There's some epiphanies that I've had with language that I do not know how to leave down.
Sure.
That I think we don't give enough credence to, and I think part of what we need to fix the problems that we've talked about is a new story. And I don't know if that involves having a new language, but we need a new story of what it is to be human in relation to the rest of nature.
Right.
Because the way we have it now, that we're special and the rest of nature is pretty much just there for us, just waiting for us to grab it and make something out of it. God, we are so hubristic. God, we really think that the couple of billions of years this earth has been here is just for us. Mm-hmm. And then what's the purpose of us? Mm-hmm. To create a little bit of dopamine. That's it. That's the pinnacle of humanity. Dopamine, some good feelings, and that's it. Life out, and that's the purpose of everything. Right. I'm not down with that. And I think there's the world of language, the kind of social reality that we dwell in of language has created a lot of confusion. I think it's created a lot of separation between humans and nature, and I think that separation is continuing a lot, and it's continuing a lot through technology, which is also impossible without language. But the technology that, as you talked about, the technology has taken us away from nature. First of all, we've built our houses, we're safe, we travel in metal boxes with engines, we get our information off devices we keep in our pockets. We don't really have to come into contact with nature very much now.
No.
We don't have to come in contact with it at all. And very soon, and if we're not there already, I
think it's even worse than that. I don't think we come into contact with each other.
That's where I was going. I think where we're heading now is that we won't even have to come into contact with other humans. I mean, right now, we don't need other strangers. I mean, I can go to Dublin now, find my way around any of the back streets, find anything I want without having to talk to somebody. If I had gone to Dublin 20, 30 years ago, I would have had to ask at least 5 people where something is or where what is, and that's part of life. That was part of life, and that was part of life going back to eternity. I can't remember when that wouldn't be part of life. So these are major changes that are happening. I feel like social changes that are atomizing people, making us feel even more self-sufficient and powerful.
Right, yeah.
But I think there's a super danger to that. A super danger. Not only are we stepping away from nature, we're stepping away from each other. Mm-hmm. And this hyper-individualized person is not somebody I like very much, to be honest. It's not somebody I'd like to be.
I think it's worse than your personal predilection for liking or disliking somebody. I think it's worse because it's absolutely dangerous to our survival. Because if you look at the collapse of the Greek Empire, or it wasn't an empire, but the Greek state and the Roman Empire, unpopular opinion, but what happened was that they went from, all those great plays that the Greeks wrote were written amongst famine and wars and stuff like that. When peace came and the administrators took over, both in Greece and in Rome, when the administrators took over, the administrating of the state became the most important thing. It became what's the word? It became abstract. It became abstract. That. And when people were living in abstract times, the structure or the underlying energy that built that society faded away. So all that was left at the end was abstraction, and that's nothing.
Yeah.
It's but an abstraction.
Yeah.
And these societies collapsed. And I think that's what we see throughout history, is that once we sort of give over our power to abstractions and the bureaucratic class, which is only solely built upon abstractions, then the end is nigh.
The end is nigh, yeah.
So we should just stop on that.
On that cheery thought.
No, but I mean, sort of seriously though, we have to stop thinking of other people as being other people, but as people just like us. You know, and they're just human, and they're not instrumental. They're not there as a means to an end for us. They're just our companions on this journey.
Yeah,
and
although they're like us, their being isn't necessarily like us. Their way of life is not necessarily the same as ours, and ours is not necessarily better.
Yeah, we have to be careful of that, because we have benefits. The benefits don't always outweigh the problems. Costs. Yeah.
Okay, Tom, this has been great. I definitely hope to get you back here.
Definitely. We have more to say about the narrative and what we can do in the future.
Absolutely. But thanks very much for sharing your career with us and sharing. I know you're reluctant to talk about these things, and I really appreciate you coming on here and having this chat.
Well, yeah, I'm glad we got the philosophy in there, because it's all very well taking actions in the world, but you have to think about them as well.
That's true.
That's what I'm saying.
That's true. And as we know, talking is thinking. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Duffy. Thank you very much.